The COVID-19 crisis has brought society and business to a near standstill for the past weeks, and it's also highlighted where there's a need for aid, for volunteers, and for the services of nonprofits here in San Francisco. SF Nonprofit Spotlight is a new show that highlights two nonprofits on each episode to show the work they're doing on everything from food insecurity, economic relief, family support, to services for the unhoused. In today's episode, you can find out how to sign up as a volunteer to help a senior in your neighborhood or join a local nonprofit, or how to receive help if you're sick and stuck at home, or even how to join a love parade convoy of cars through the city's neighborhood. Our city and community need us to come together right now, whether it's donating funds if you're financially secure or some time if you have it to volunteer. Today we feature inspiring and motivating interviews with Sunset Youth Services and Together SF. Together SF is a fairly new nonprofit that was formed in March as a peer-powered community response network, pairing volunteers with vulnerable neighbors and with organizations who need some support to carry out their services. If you've been wondering how you can get involved and help your community, even for a one-time event, or if you're at home and need some help, keep watching. And joining us now from Together SF, remotely from quarantine, are Kanishka and Griffin, who started Together SF together last month in response to the COVID-19 crisis. Thank you so much for joining us and telling us about some of your work. Kanishka, can you start by telling us just an overview of some of the highlights of the work that Together SF has done over the past month?
Yeah, I think some of the most rewarding work we've been able to do this past month has been matching individuals with seniors or other members of vulnerable populations in their own communities that had no way to get some help. So most recently, we had an elderly gentleman that was Russian speaking that I think he's in the 80s. He couldn't get his prescription. His pharmacy wouldn't ship it to him. He saw one of our flyers. He talked to his daughter in Chicago. She requested help, and we matched him with a Russian-speaking volunteer in San Francisco that was able to go pick up his prescription and deliver it to him, and within a day. So, I mean, that was incredibly rewarding. We also have a couple of volunteers that have matched with seniors that are now doing their groceries for them almost weekly, and they have are building their own relationships and this senior has a great resource in their neighborhood now that can be there for them.
So it really sounds like your slogan, neighbors helping neighbors, is very true, even in that microcosm interpersonal sense, which is beautiful. And the other thing that Together SF helps with is to organize volunteers with the tech and the system that you've created for nonprofits as well.
That's right. Griffin, you want to talk about that?
So when we started Together SF, we quickly found out that there were many nonprofits in San Francisco that had a higher demand for volunteers than they ever had before. And instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and reach the populations that those nonprofits were already working with, we figured we might as well just help them get people faster and in a more easy way. So what we found to be extremely helpful is that we will make it really easy for someone to sign up with us, and then we'll just hand over those volunteers over to the nonprofits who need them the most, right?
So that's a really good point. The need for the services of various nonprofits in the city must have really changed during just these weeks and almost 2 months of the crisis. What have you seen the need become, let's say, in San Francisco?
So the biggest thing has been a number of nonprofits that primarily serve seniors. They do what's called congregate meals. So they have like a cafeteria and seniors come in, pay a very low cost to have a meal on site with other seniors. So they get social interaction and they get a hot meal. We can't do that anymore because of social distancing and shelter in place. So a lot of nonprofits had to quickly pivot from on-site meal service to meal delivery service and then expand that hugely to serve the growth in people that are now stuck at home. And so it took some of these nonprofits about a week or two to get that system up and running, and then we were able to plug in our volunteers to their newly expanded services.
That's great. And so, Kanishka, you used to work for the city, so you have some background about how the system works, and how did that help you kind of navigate some of the obstacles that the average person might face when they think, hey, I want to help or I want to get involved?
Yeah, I've had a unique insight into how the nonprofits work and what the work it is that they're doing and what their unique challenges are. But one thing that always stuck out to me was that food insecurity is a real problem in San Francisco that most people aren't aware of. We consider ourselves a very wealthy city with a great social service net, but food insecurity is still a problem. And many nonprofits, I think, right now we're just sort of barely making the cut of being able to service populations. And then we had this huge uptick in unemployment, more people that need those services, more people that need food. And so I think just knowing that, and also knowing who to call at nonprofits, and that I had an existing relationship with folks that they would trust that I'd be able to deliver people, really helped us build those relationships and connections and deliver volunteers and help quickly that way.
Who are some of the people that you're seeing who are volunteering and getting involved, and what has the response been like?
Oh my gosh, they really, I think, cover like the breadth of San Francisco. We're seeing like newcomers, young people that just got here that are, they're safely employed, they're healthy, they're housing secure, and they just have like resources and time and want to give back to people with families, people with kids, people that are struggling with their work that have more time as well. I think it covers the whole breadth of San Franciscans.
And so that's wonderful to hear that it's bringing us together. Really, it's like, neighbors helping neighbors is what you guys say.
Yeah.
And Griffin, you told me before that your background also informed a little bit differently than Kanishka's, how you came to this idea and started Together SF. Tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Um, I have lived in San Francisco for almost 10 years and have worked in tech the whole time, and have found it maybe a bit troubling to understand how I, as someone who works in tech, am supposed to get involved with the community, because all these headlines that we see and the narratives that we digest in San Francisco are that folks like me are the problem, not part of the solution. And if they ever are part of the solution, it's in a not very positive way. And that's actually what brought Kanishka and I together as friends a number of months ago, because we had been working on civic engagement projects for the city. Is like, how do you start to answer that question of how you give people like me who are not engaged in the local political process an easy way to get involved, and a way to help people like me know that your participation, especially on a local level, really matters, and it has a huge impact on the way that the city looks, and importantly, how you live your day-to-day life. So that has deeply inspired me to do this work and to really get into the weeds with Kanishka on it, to now in a crisis provide people those tools that they need to easily get involved, but even beyond the crisis, to understand how I as an individual have an impact on the way that this entire city looks and operates.
Rather than buying into that narrative that the tech workers are the problem and you're not the one who deserves or belongs to get involved, you completely changed it, not just for yourself, but made this really
Yeah.
easy sort of vehicle for people to access opportunities. Tell us about
Yeah.
that. Walk us through how someone gets involved. So if I hear about Together SF, and you've had some good news coverage. There's some nice photos on social media of volunteers doing good. Walk us through how somebody gets involved.
So usually the first thing that we'll see is someone will sign up as a volunteer on our website. And then immediately what happens is we'll get that information into our systems that we've slapped together. And we have a small network of what we call super volunteers, who are folks who raise their hand wanting to help with the coordination work that we're doing to help match volunteers to opportunities. So as soon as that information comes in, either one of us or our super volunteers will reach back out to you and confirm that we've received your information. And then after that, we do usually two things. One is, on a weekly basis, we'll send out a survey to you to say, here's what we've got coming up this week where we need your support. You can click through that survey and sign up for different volunteer opportunities with organizations that week. And then once you've signed up, we will pass your information along to those nonprofits and help make sure that you know where to go and what to do. The other thing that we'll do is, as one-off opportunities come up, maybe there's someone who is a senior in your neighborhood who needs a grocery delivery, is one of us or our super volunteers will reach out to you directly and say, hey, there's this person, here's what they need, can you fulfill that? If so, we'll give you the details and help equip you to go do that in a timely manner.
Great. Do you each or either of you have a favorite story or kind of touching, heartwarming thing that has happened since you started organizing volunteers?
The very first person that we matched, um, her name is Jean, and she's matched up with a volunteer, and she was so happy to know that it was somebody that lives in her neighborhood. And this is a woman that lives alone, and she the fact that they now communicate weekly about their grocery shopping needs, and Jean knows that she has somebody in her neighborhood that if something happens, she knows she can call who will be there for her. I think it's not just about like having your basic grocery needs met, but the social connection is really important for folks who are maybe not like us, who are always able to get on a Zoom call with our friends and FaceTime our friends, who are just not that technologically savvy, to know that they can pick up a phone and call somebody and somebody will answer and like be their friend basically.
Mhm.
That's really sweet. Did you have one you were going to add, Griffin?
Yeah, I think that one is great. Just to know that we're facilitating these deeper, longer lasting connections that I think can and hopefully will persist beyond this crisis. One that comes to mind for me as a particularly encouraging story was actually the first person that I interacted with when they called into our phone line, right when we launched it, was a senior living in the Hayes Valley area, and called and said that he was on his last can of sardines, which was just fascinating to me because he said, I'm on my last can of sardines. I didn't know if anyone would even pick up this number, and I wasn't sure where else to go to have someone go out and help me get more food. And it just struck me in that moment that, like, it's not the crisis that has made this person feel so isolated. It's actually just that they likely were isolated before the crisis. And for them to have a lifeline in this case and someone to talk to and to know that, like, we will actually deliver on getting the things that they need is so amazing. When we finished the delivery, he mentioned that that was the thing that he was so, or the most grateful for, Together SF providing him, was just someone that he could talk to, more so than even the food, which I think, to Kanishka's point, is what we were really trying to build, is those community connections that might not otherwise exist.
That's really important and really touching. And I think when we talked before, you mentioned that the crisis highlighted where we do need to make changes in our community as a city and in the systems. And I know that we all really hope that this kind of work carries forward whenever the shelter orders are lifted in the crisis. And it reminds me of volunteering and doing something for others, the same way you're saying, Griffin, how good you felt just talking to this gentleman, and how people are eager to find a way to help. That in times of when we have hard times in our life, or depression, that actually one of the biggest uh, endorphin boosts we can get, dopamine or oxytocin, is helping another. And so it's like this secret to helping depression and helping feeling low, is actually to volunteer and help others. And so I think what you're offering by connecting people is not just, like you said, for the food, but also kind of goes both ways. That is really rewarding for people. What do you hope to see going forward with Together SF after the shelter orders are lifted?
We really hope that what people get out of the experience of volunteering with a nonprofit or helping an individual is that they feel connected to their community and to the city. I think, San Francisco has this reputation of being such a transient city, and no one's really connected to the city and like cares about the long term of the city. But what we're seeing is, even if you're here for a short amount of time, you just don't know how to get connected. And we hope that Together SF helps you feel more connected to the city. And that goodwill just continues to grow exponentially.
What are some examples, going back to how people can get involved? What are some of the opportunities and nonprofits they may find on the website that they can get involved in?
So we've been doing these big mobilizations with the African American, the Faith Network, and they are packaging up groceries for hundreds of families every weekend. And so they launched this effort last weekend. We sent 25 volunteers, and they packaged groceries, I think, to serve close to 1,000 families across San Francisco. And that's just one of our mobilizations. So we're also sending volunteers weekly to Komochi, which is a Japantown-based organization that serves mostly Japanese seniors who are homebound, so doing meal delivery for those folks. A similar organization called Self Help for the Elderly does it throughout the city, does meal delivery, and we're sending volunteers there weekly. Any other ones that I'm missing, Griffin?
We've been sending folks to the food bank, Meals on Wheels, done some work with Open House. It really varies week to week based on what we're hearing from nonprofits. Like, hey, someone from a nonprofit will reach out and say, hey, we really need this amount of people by this day, or we just had a bunch of volunteers cancel. Can you help us fill those shifts? So what volunteers who sign up with Together SF will see is that every week it's kind of an evolving list of nonprofits that we provide them the opportunity to go work with.
And I think something unique that we're doing that you're seeing play out in small business too is like there are the bigger, well-known, well-established nonprofits are always get tons of volunteers and resources, and the smaller ones that people don't really know who are also serving people in very vulnerable situations. People just don't know they exist, and I think we're very excited to be able to highlight the work of those nonprofits and bring in more folks to help them, like Komochi and Self Help for the Elderly.
Yeah, we feel the same also, that a big part of highlighting nonprofits like you and others is to let people know both what work is being done, but also what the need is. How can the community and citizens who are healthy and financially secure help? How can the city help? Because I'm sure we need the city to step up also in some ways and contribute. Is there anything either if you would like to add that you want people to know, or a call for volunteers, or any way that people can reach you, or anything else you'd like to add about your work?
We would just love to have more folks sign up. We always have a need, especially for folks that speak other languages. We've seen a growing demand for Cantonese, Mandarin, and Russian speaking folks, seniors that need help. And ideally, I think they feel the most comfortable speaking to somebody who can communicate in their native language. That's a huge need for us. And I think overall, we just want people to know that just engaging in one volunteer activity will make you feel great about your community. And so don't feel like it's a long-term commitment. It's totally at your schedule and needs to get involved.
Wonderful. Would you like to add anything, Griffin, before we wrap up?
Yeah, maybe one more thing I would add is what I personally have reflected on in my own journey in San Francisco, and now I'm really being confronted with Together SF and also the crisis, is that getting involved is a choice, and it's not a big scary one. And we all have the opportunity to be a part of the problem or the solution. And being a part of the solution doesn't actually require that much work, especially when we're launching tools like Together SF. All that you have to do is take one small action to help another person, another organization, and that will spiral into something much bigger and more impactful for the entire city. I really am a strong believer in the ripple effect. You taking one small action leads someone else to do the same. And together, I think that we can really change the fabric of the city and start to write a new narrative for the way that San Francisco operates now and in the future.
Well, you're both setting such a great model for how to do that, and such a good example. Thank you so much for the work you're doing. Thanks for talking to us and sharing with San Francisco viewers all the great stories and the work you're doing.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
The current pandemic crisis has forced schools to close, meaning youth and their families are experiencing drastic changes to their lives, not just with classroom time, but also meal services and connections with adults. For 25 years, Sunset Youth Services has provided support for creativity and connection to high risk San Francisco youth and their families. They provide model relationships between youth and adults. They help with court cases and with creative learning opportunities. Here's how they've kept going during the crisis with some adjustments. Joining us now from Sunset Youth Services is their Development and Communications Associate, Melissa Loretta. Thanks for talking us today remotely from quarantine.
Hi.
Hi. So Melissa, Sunset Youth Services does so much in-person work normally before the shelter-in-place order with youth and doing programs for high-risk youth and families. What has changed with the shelter-in-place order, and what kind of services are you still offering during the crisis?
Yeah, so our big youth center actually closed in March. Our doors closed to the public, and youth and families weren't allowed to come in anymore. So we took our relationships and our services and our programs literally out to the streets. Relationships and crisis management are our highest priority. And so right now, what we're doing is going virtual with meetings, going virtual with court appointments, going virtual with love, basically. Our biggest essential service that we're providing is feeding our families and kids. And so we have partnered with Trader Joe's, we've partnered with 911, and we've partnered with the food bank to provide food boxes for hundreds of kids and families each week ever since shelter in place happened. We also included in the virtual and non-virtual connection is going to kids' apartments and units and houses and literally like waiting outside the door to have a conversation for safety reasons too. But we had one of our case managers had told us, like, I couldn't get a hold of one of our youth on my case. And so I went to her apartment building and stood outside her door just to wait to have a conversation about her case and about just how we can help her, how we can support her. And she finally got home and answered, and they talked through the door, literally, to just help her navigate the situation and her crisis. And so it's things like that we've been doing that are, mostly sheltering in place, but not so much if, she doesn't have, or if they don't have a computer or a phone to communicate with us through.
What are you seeing some of the youth that you're working with going through? Has their situations changed from a practical level or from a morale or emotional level? I imagine they need services like this maybe more than ever.
Yeah, I feel like our youth hub, when kids were allowed to come into our building, was just a place of safety and healthy adult relationships that they might not have at home or at school. And so I think cutting that off has been really detrimental to just, even us as staff, not being able to see our kids in person, not being able to hug them, not being able to like hear their voices, and for them to hear our voices as well. I think it's been really lonely for a lot of our youth and families, and kind of frustrating too, especially if they don't know how to deal with their kids or how to teach them, because our teen parents are not teachers, right? And our youth maybe don't have the skills to sit at home all day for 8 plus hours a day, right? And I think the non-freedom of sheltering in place has been not just really lonely, but really I feel like there's an ache that our kids are feeling, and this longing to just reconnect with us and reconnect with their friends too in our youth community and staff community as well.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you need to keep your services going right now, whether from volunteers, from the city? How can people help or get involved?
Yeah, so along with the food boxes that we deliver, a lot of that is done through staff who use their own cars and drive all across the city to deliver food boxes. And so we have an email list that, someone can sign up for to volunteer to deliver food boxes, because we do deliver hundreds of meals every week. Another way people can get involved is through our fundraising gala, which we've had to cancel. We've been we've been going to the Bentley Reserve for our gala for many years now, and due to city limitations and just coronavirus, we've had to cancel our in-person gala. And so we are taking that virtually to Facebook Live. And so now no one has to pay for a ticket. No one has to get all dolled up and dressed up. It's
Dressing up optional in your living room.
Exactly. It's called Live from the Living Room, and it's just a chance for people to, one, learn about what we do at Sunset Youth Services, and two, just to have a fun time, to be able to breathe, to enjoy, a quarantini, something that we added to our fun gala cocktail list, and to just be able to know that things are happening outside here in San Francisco, and that kids and families are still being loved and served. I think another fun thing that if people really wanted to join us for, we are doing something called Love Parades. It's a convoy of staff cars along with our big mobile recording studio Sprinter van, where we drive around the city and literally shout love to our kids and families, and have signs and hold posters and blow kisses. And we've done it twice already. And so I think
where does it move through?
So yesterday we went to the Mission District and Cow Hollow. The week before, that was our first week, so we went all over the city for 5 hours, and just drove to 30 of our youth and families' apartments and houses and places of shelter, and yelled love at them. And so if they're interested in doing that, then come on and join our love parade. I think we'd love to have you.
How can people find out more? Is that on your website?
Yes, all this information is on our website at sunsetyouthservices.org, and we have a contact page, so you can email us there, and most likely it'll be me who responds to you.
So we've already met Melissa, so anybody who feels that they would like to reach out to help San Francisco at-risk youth, you have the option of joining virtually the annual gala, which was sadly canceled, but is now Friday, May 1st, as a Facebook Live, and we can find you on Facebook, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, and what else can people do to get involved or help? Come join the Love Parade, donations through your website, is that where we would find that?
Yes, at the top of our menu, we have a donate page that you can just click and give to our page, yeah.
What is something that you and Sunset Youth Services have learned during the crisis that you hope will carry over after the shelter in place is lifted? Something inspiring or some need that you feel needs to continue to be addressed?
That's a good question. I think, so like I said earlier, crisis response and relationships are our highest priority. And I think we've really grasped onto that and held on to the belief that healthy attachment and community and relationships are like the core of who we are. And I think with our love parade, just seeing the faces of little babies and of seeing the faces of our young parents and kids and families light up, I think it made me realize, and it made all of us realize, that we really are a family, with our youth community and with our staff family. And I think that connection that we have as we work together, to whether it's driving around in a love parade or delivering food boxes to our kids and families, I think the familial aspect, I think, has strengthened actually, even though it's mostly virtual now. But I think we want to take away that relationships are just the deepest thing that we can carry with us throughout sheltering in place, and they haven't actually gone away. Like, our relationships are still going, and FaceTime calls are still happening with our kids, and texts are happening, and face-to-face with food box delivery is still happening. And so I think carrying on relationships and love for our kids and our staff family as well, I think we want to carry.
That's wonderful. It seems like for so many organizations and workplaces, extending services has become more challenging, but also the innovation and the creativity has helped us find some new avenues to reach out
Mhm.
and to care for each other, and we all hope that that does continue and go onward. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll make sure that viewers get all of your contact information. They can follow you on social media and find your website. Thanks for sharing, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you.
We have the opportunity to support our community, our city, and our neighbors with so many of the choices that we make every single day. At SF Commons, we hope to connect you with the wonderful nonprofits that provide essential services to our friends and neighbors in the city, so you can be a part of it too. Please follow SF Commons on social media, watch our community programming on cable TV or streaming online. And you can make a show too by joining SF Commons, where we give you the tools, training, and a slot on cable TV for free. Just go to Bay Area Video Coalition's website, bavc.org, and check out SF Commons.